Artist and Soul series of interviews with top artists and their stories on JoyTV Network. This is the first episode of Artist and Soul and for JoyTV Network, and I'm really excited to be with Robert Gann from Maui, Hawaii. He describes himself as a new old-school abstract expressionist. He is represented at the Leonidas Arts New York Gallery. And Robert, thank you so much for being here with me.
Absolutely, Joy. It's great to see you, and thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I look forward to our discussion.
So I'm a very big fan of yours, and I appreciate having something different and it's so textural. Later, you'll see lots of Robert's unique, incredible artwork. For now, I want to give you just a peek so you'll understand when I say I want to touch it. Look at all the texture and layers. I think art is really important for people, and I think that your art could really live well in a lot of places, and especially in, I would think it would be really great in hotels because it's so large and it's something different about what you see every day. So that's why I really like it. And it gives you a feeling like, oh, this is fascinating. And like I said, I just want to feel it. But if it feels like oil paints, then I know what that feels like. But it looks kind of like fabric.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought, is it woven when I first looked at it?
Yeah. That's funny you mentioned that. I've done a few pieces where I take the canvas and I have a frame, and then I weave the canvas. The initial canvas is woven onto the frame and leaving little slits where you can actually see through. And then I'll weave more and tie, kind of like the old macrame days, when they made things out of macrame. But it's not quite like that. But I'll weave and tie more fabric on there and paint it, and then I backlight it with LED lights. And the light comes through, and it's really fascinating. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I've actually about a year ago I commissioned a piece for that for someone who lives here on Maui, and it turned out really nice. And I have several of those paintings at a restaurant here on Maui, and they use it to decorate their restaurant, and it's really effective with that LED lighting. Yeah,
that's really clever. But what kind of paint do you use?
Well, primarily I work with acrylic. Sometimes I include oil or pastels, but the majority of my work lately has been with acrylic.
How did you start doing the floating layers you are known for?
The layering that I do, it's really by accident that I happened onto this process. I was experimenting with some texture that I created using different media, and I was thinking about how I could use that texture. And one day I was just playing around in my studio, and I just dripped a few lines of paint on a board, and then I put down a layer of texture on top of the paint with just areas where the layer below, there was just spots where the layer below would peek through. And then I put another layer of paint down, dripping it again, and then more texture. And I did that process about 4 or 5 times. And I couldn't really see what was going on underneath. So it was just an experiment. So after about 4 or 5 of these layers, I decided, okay, I want to see what this looks like. And so I shook out and removed all of the texture. And what I saw were layers of paint that were actually separate from each other. Most of the time when you put on a layer of paint, the one layer is just right immediately on top of the next. Excuse me, but these layers actually had dimension to them. They were separate, and they were held together at those points where the the layer below was attached to the layer above. So it ended up with a 3D reveal. And it just really struck me at that point that I had never ever imagined that I could do that with paint. And then it immediately flashed for me that, when they create like a sand cast mold, they will create the cast, pour the molten metal into the cast, and then they remove all the sand and it leaves behind whatever you were casting. Well, it's very similar with the paint, putting down the layers with the media in between and then removing all the media. And what you're left with are these three-dimensional layers of paint. So it was very unique. And so I've been developing that now for several years. And I've coined the phrase floating layers for the technique. So anyway, that's a little background on how all that came about.
That's just totally awesome. And you've only been doing this a couple of years?
Well, I started really painting in the fall of 2017. I was able to organize my life to where I was able to focus primarily on painting at that time. And so, yeah, basically this will be, I'm into basically the fourth year now of being a full-time artist. And I've dabbled with art throughout my life, but this was a decision to really have it be my primary focus.
Do you get any inspiration from where you live?
Yeah, we do. It's such a beautiful place. We have probably the best weather of anywhere in the world. And we have incredible range of, of climate here. Some years ago, I was at a Starbucks here on Maui, and I ran into a geologist who's also he's into climate change. And he was explaining to me that he was here on Maui examining all of the different types of climate zones. And he said, really, the only thing that we don't have on Maui are the extreme desert, like you would experience maybe in Northern Africa, and Arctic tundra. Those are the only two geological or climate type zones that we don't have here. So you can drive for 5 minutes and be in a different climate zone with different types of vegetation. And so it really is, there's incredible variety here, not to mention the water and the volcanoes and all of that too. So, and there's a huge culture here. I mean, we have people from everywhere that are living here, and they bring their culture with them. And so a lot of influences that way, yeah.
Well, tell me how you got into New York art galleries.
Okay, well, I quite often will connect with folks through LinkedIn, which is a social media platform primarily for business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just messaging different people to connect with them. And there was a fellow that I saw that was from New York City, and he was involved in the art world. And I messaged him, and he contacted me. He actually messaged me back and said he wanted to talk because he had followed some links to my website and saw my work. So he called me, and we talked, and it was actually a real surprise to me. He had been in New York in the art scene for decades. He used to hang out with the likes of Warhol and Basquiat and all these people, and he was right there in the middle of that scene. And he was also an art dealer and a gallery owner. So anyway, for whatever reason, I'm not absolutely sure, he took a liking to my work.
Of course, your work is incredible.
So it grew from there. And then it was about a little over a year ago that he asked me if I would like to be represented with his gallery back in New York. So that's where it's at this point. And so, yeah, actually, I'll be talking to one of the folks that are involved in building their gallery online website. I'll be talking with them tomorrow about, how we're proceeding. So anyway, it's been a really nice connection to have that. And hopefully one of these days I can go back to New York for a show. And I've never been to New York.
Oh,
I was raised in the Western United States, in Denver and Colorado, and I've been around the West, but I've never been back east further than the Mississippi River. So I'll be a newbie to the East Coast. Yeah.
well, that would be quite exciting. If you're going to have a show there, let me know and I'll meet you there. I've been to
Yeah.
New York. It's interesting, but I would never want to live there. I used to think I would only live in the country because I lived in wine country, but I recently moved back to the city after being gone for most of my adult life. Well, all of my adult life I've been gone from
Oh,
Orange
wow.
County, California. And I have to say, I really like being in the city. I never thought I would, but New York is just too many tall skyscrapers and not enough sky.
I
But it's
know.
fun to go and see the art and the plays and everything. I think you would enjoy it a lot. And it's
Yeah.
amazing when you're selling such beautiful artwork there that you've never been there to see it hanging there. I think that would be really something for you as an artist.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love to ship some work back there and actually go back there for an event. So we'll see. Hopefully things will settle down with the pandemic, and maybe we can do that maybe this year. Who knows?
I hope so. When I
Yeah.
was a child living in the same city I live in now, my mother was an artist and she sold her works in Laguna Beach and in Los Angeles. And she sold a lot of paintings. She's actually in a book called The Art and Soul of Jane St. John. And so that's where I came up with the art and soul. But she called herself a spiritual artist. And she said everything came to her from divine revelation or whatever. And she painted beautiful sceneries. Do you ever feel like when you're doing your work that is inspired by more than just what you're going to do? I mean,
Yeah. Well, there are things, spirituality is a very important part of my life. Just especially the real basic things, the golden rule, do it for others as you would have them do unto you. And just really, applying basic principles to life, to seek peaceful relationships with people, and kindness and generosity and patience, what a virtue. So those things influence my life. And I know that they influence my work, even though most of the time it isn't really conscious. It isn't a conscious influence, but it's just more of it's just more of an extension of how I feel about things. And occasionally I'll I'll have a piece that I have a piece that I recently did when the Afghanistan withdrawal took place. And I was viewing this, of course, with everybody else on the media, but seeing the faces of all these thousands of people desperate to get out of Afghanistan. And that influenced a painting. And I titled that painting Left Behind. And it was just a painting to try and just grasp the emotion of the faces of all these people that were left behind. So sometimes something like that will influence a painting, but to answer your question, yes, spirituality influences my work, but usually it's not a conscious planned, I don't have a method of trying to create a spiritual peace in that sense. So, yeah.
that I found that being creative is a really good healing modality. I'm not exactly what to call it, but I was playing with an idea of writing a book and calling it Depression to Joy Through Creativity. My creativity is in interior design and creating houses and also writing. And so do you feel like when you're sad or depressed, if you can go just make some art, does it help you feel better?
Sometimes it's just a great distraction from feeling down, or feeling distressed or feeling anxiety. And in that sense, it's a relief. Yeah. I don't necessarily treat it like a personal therapy as much as a just a way to release, the maybe a feeling of anxiety, or maybe to release pressure from, stressful day or something like that. But it really all it all comes together, right? You can't really disassociate your work as a writer or as a designer, or in your case, with maybe building architecture or writing, writing a story. Those things you can't really separate them that much. They're all intertwined, and so yeah, it's an interesting. Creativity is such an interesting topic, really. And I when I see someone's work, whether it's a painter or an architect or a dancer, a poet, someone playing music, that really puts all of that together. You can see that their whole life is put together in a very balanced and focused way. It just comes out. You can just feel it. You can see it. You can hear it. And I really appreciate the work that goes in to accomplishing that. Yeah.
Well, I have another question for you along those lines. When you wake up in the morning, are you ready to go to work and not consider it work?
Well, when I wake up in the morning, I have my little routine. I'll fix some breakfast. I have a nice little Italian cappuccino maker that I'll heat up some coffee, and then I like to start my day out with some spiritual thoughts. I'll usually read a chapter in the Bible, and I've been reading the book of Psalms lately.
Oh.
And just prior to that, I was reading the book of Ecclesiastes, which is an incredible book written by King Solomon, of all people. He was a very wise man. And if you remember a song by a band called The Byrds, and that song was called Turn, Turn, Turn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that song was taken from the 3rd chapter of Ecclesiastes. Those lyrics, a time to build, a time to tear down,
yeah,
time to plant, a time to uproot, time for peace, time for war. All of those lyrics came from that chapter in Ecclesiastes. So a beautiful way to start the day. And then from there, I'll look at, I'll just kind of glance at the headlines of the news, check email, and then I'll get my day started. So I don't usually wake up with a drawing pad and a pen. I have a little routine just to get going.
Then I would say, since you're reading your spirituality, that everything that you're doing is you're just flowing along with the flow of life and love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really, for me, that's what it's really about. And currently our lives there are so many demands on us, and a lot of people that I talk to say that they're more crazy busy now during this pandemic than they've ever been.
I know.
And it's just the nature of our world right now. It's gotten so complex and so demanding. And so I find that it's really difficult to balance all of that and to find the time to do the things that are really important, to keep those things first, and then let everything else filter in when the time is there. Yeah.
So how long does it take you to complete a big giant piece of art? And what do you call them?
Well, they're paintings, basically.
Okay.
It really depends upon a lot of factors. I'm currently working on a piece right now that I started several years ago, and I looked at it, let it hang on the wall, kept looking at it, and then recently I tore a lot of it apart, and now I'm reworking it. So that piece will probably end up taking 4 years. Whereas other pieces, I might do it in a matter of 2 or 3 days. So I don't know, it's hard to give you a time on that, but it really just comes down to when I feel like it's done enough. I don't think I've ever felt like one was completely finished, but I feel like I get to a point where it's done enough.
Done enough.
Which reminds me, I did queue up a little video that I made yesterday. Just kind of a walkthrough of our.
Would love to see that. You want to share that with us now?
Yeah, sure. Let me pull that up for. All right, welcome to our studio and gallery. Robert Gann with the art farm here, and just a couple of pieces that I just recently put on the entrance to act as a welcome. There's a piece that I'm currently working on. This guy is 80 inches by 48 inches. And this one is going to be an emotional ride. I have a feeling about this one. That is one of my first pieces that I created. It's a door. I love that piece. And this is another one of the first pieces I just recently hung up as a flash of the past. It's carved on board and painted. And all kinds of interesting little characters in this piece. You can see them doing all sorts of interesting things. All right, so this here is a lighted piece. It's a Sun Series piece, but it has these very nice, subtle lights that come back behind each of the sun strokes there. And then this piece here is another lighted piece. Yeah, the way this was created is, the initial canvas in the background was woven onto a frame, and then the rest of the piece was woven and tied and painted, of course, and then backlit with LEDs. It's kind of nice to be able to see the depth and see the layers. Yeah. Piece I've done on board. It was really fun to create this, I guess it's a quadruptic. Kind of hard to say. We'll do a tour that's more in depth about why these pieces were created, what the feeling was behind them. Here's a recent piece. Yeah, here's another recent piece that I created, and I like this one. It's got a freeness to it. And then this guy. I don't know if I can get back far enough to show the whole thing, but yeah. And what I love about these is they hang from the ceiling, and it is painted on both sides. I don't have this one that far from the wall just due to space, but yeah, they're both sides on these pieces. Oh yeah, this piece. When the withdrawal took place in Afghanistan, and I saw all those thousands of faces on the people who were desperate to leave, that inspired this piece. It's called Left Behind. A fun piece to create. You can see the side view, the texture that's going on here.
You might think this piece is in black and white until you look closer.
This one 4 was actually inspired by the first time I was a kid. I think I was 12 years old. My father took me golfing, and toward the end, I think it was close to the 9th hole, might have been the 9th hole, quite by accident, I hit a hole in 1. So I titled this piece 4. That's what we used to say, or at least what my father used to say when they were teeing off. And this piece here, Drawings from the Mind Cave, #1, the first of a series. Yeah, that's a tour, pretty much of the gallery. This is Robert saying aloha, and hope to see you if you come to Maui. Come visit. We'll give you a private studio tour, and maybe some fresh avocados or mangoes if you come at the right time. All right, hui ho and aloha.
So is there anything else that you want to share with us?
Well, I think the main thing for me is, a lot of folks that I know that are artists, they really struggle with actually getting their art out there and getting it sold and getting that all together. And fortunately for me, I've started other businesses in the past over the years, and I've over the years learned more about how to, to market, how to do those, those basic tasks of getting your work out there. And so I would just like to encourage other artists that really, being an artist it requires being artistic, being creativity. And it's really, marketing is an art as well. It requires creativity. And so if as an artist, if you view it that way, it's just another form of art. Because I think a lot of artists view it as this horrid task of having to, I have to go do this sales and marketing and everything, and it seems awful. But if you view it as a creative art form, then it can be quite exciting, actually, because it's challenging. And if you do it right, it really is a form of art. So yeah, I would just like to encourage other artists out there to maybe take another way of looking at that whole issue of marketing and selling their work. So yeah, and then, the main thing I think really is to just to really have a balanced life as an artist, to not be too extreme in any area, but to balance everything as best you can, because I think that creates a much healthier atmosphere for you to work. And I think it helps to avoid the incredible ups and downs in life too, by staying more balanced. And so anyway, that's my take on it. And I'm just another person out there in the world, but I certainly feel that I'm definitely thankful and grateful for the opportunity to do this, and for this interview too. It's great. I appreciate your invitation to do this. So
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And thanks for joining us for this episode of the Artist and Soul series on JoyTV Network. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of the upcoming videos from JoyTV Network, a community of artists, authors, musicians, speakers, and business leaders who inspire loving and profitable friendships worldwide to bring about peace, which creates joy. For more information, check the description below for links.